Car manufacturers are constantly trying to innovate and modernize each and every model of car they bring out. But sometimes what seems to be good on paper doesn't turn out the way it was planned on the real world. Welcome back to MIA Luxury Cars, and here are the horrible car engineering fails. Toyota unintended acceleration. Between 2005 and 2010, Toyota had to recall over 9 million cars in the US due to floor mats. Toyota fitted removable floor mats to practically all of its cars in this period in an effort to make them easy to take out and clean. Floor mats are great. What they didn't expect was the floor mat would move around on the floor as you step on them and eventually slide up over the accelerator, forcing the car to accelerate rapidly. Like your car started driving as fast as it could, and lots of people couldn't stop. This resulted in thousands of crashes and somewhere between 59 and 89 deaths. G65 AMG, too fast in reverse. You all know about the G-Wagon. Kim Kardashian owns 9 of them. Originally, they were only used by the military and German farmers, and they were more like a slow truck in terms of performance. But now they're fast, really fast. They got a handmade AMG twin turbo, 621 horsepower. It will do 0 to 60 in 5 seconds, which is crazy because it is classified as a tiny house. Despite having 4-wheel drive and all the modern-day Mercedes technology to help keep them on the road, their tall stance is relatively narrow. Wheel-based mean that they're pretty sketchy feeling when you're going fast in them. But everything is scarier in reverse. Well, in 2016, 20 G65 AMGs sold in North America had to be recalled because someone had a few too many Sneeder ways adventinas, ice and box, and forgot a program and electrical speed limiter for the reverse gear. Now, without this little tiny piece of software limiting the reverse speed, the car could achieve speeds in excess of 60 miles per hour, going backwards in a tiny house. Pontiac Aztek, short-circuiting brain. The Aztek is so gross. It's awesome. It's like eating your own booger. Back in the came out in the early 2000s, it was basically one of the first crossovers ever. It came with an all-wheel drive. It sat high on the road and had room for lots of people inside. It was ahead of this time. You could even get one with a tent. It had a tailgate with a cup holder in it and had a removable cooler in the center console. People criticized it for its looks, but the simple fact is that 20 years after its creation, we're all over here driving crossovers. But for all its subtle future-proofing end, Aztek had a really Achilles heel, the AC drain plug. It sat right above the car's main ECU, and in the summer, the condensation from AC would drain right onto the computer, causing a short in front and to fry the car's brain. Tons of people reported the issue, but GM never officially acknowledged it. Ford Firestone exploding tires. If you've ever been a person in the past, you might remember this one. Firestone and Ford, two of the America's greatest sons, literal best friends, locked in a court battle over exploding tires. This whole story began when people started crushing in Ford's brand new SUV, the Explorer. The first reports back from the police who inspected the crash sites were that the tires appeared to have delaminated with the entire tire thread surface coming away from the tire core. Firestone and Ford had been working together since the days of the Model T. That is back in the great granddad's times, and both companies were absolutely and rightfully so horrified by the findings. Firestone instantly recorded 6.5 million wilderness radial tires with where all you put onto Explorers. However, even after this recall, the crashes continued. Eventually, Firestone came out and said that the problem wasn't their tire, but the Explorer itself. which Firestone said was unsafe and would roll over in a crash regardless of what the tire it was on. The SUV was at that time a new and highly profitable market for Ford, so they were quick to deny those allegations, and they broke up with Firestone with a cowardly attempt to keep on selling their SUV, bringing a 100-year relationship to a bitter end. Ford's faulty ignition switches. This one is also definitely their fault. Between 1998 and 1993, Ford built a 7.9 million cars and trucks with an ignition switch that, due to its location next to the engine, would overheat and fail. And how would you know that your Ford ignition switch had an overheated and failed? Well, it was easy. Your Ford would stall, and then you would lose control of the steering and braking. That's two of the most important things about driving. You got steering, you got braking. And if you were really unlucky, the ignition would set itself on fire and your entire car would burn to the ground. And allegedly, Ford was aware of the problem during development, but instead of moving to the module to the cooler location as their engineers had suggested, Ford chose to just beef up all the modules to make it last just long enough to exceed a warranty period, forcing owners to bear the costs of replacement when their car burns to the ground. It's almost like these big companies don't even care about people. The module had been installed in over 22 million Ford cars and trucks. But by the time the government-mandated recall was issued, only about 1/3 of them remained on the road. Mazda 6 attracts spider. The Mazda 6 had a problem, an 8-legged problem. We're talking about a spider. A certain species of spider known as the yellow sac spider is attracted to hydrocarbons such as gasoline. Aren't we all? The problem is, in 2009 to 2015, Mazda 6s, there was a way for tiny spiders drawn by a smell of gas to climb into the fuel, where they would spin their webs and which would eventually clog everything up and get all gunked. All these 8-legged freaks crawl their way in through a small auxiliary hose meant to allow excess gas fumes to leave the fuel system and keep the pressure within the system, all normal. Once the spiders gets in and spins their webs, the gases can't escape like they need to, and the pressure builds up in the system. Mazda became aware of the problem after 13 owners in the US actually had their gas tanks crack and leak fuel due to buildup of pressure. And eventually, they had to release a software patch that regulated the fuel system pressure, even if the spiders did start living inside of your Mazda. Tacoma rust. From 1994 all the way to 2004, first-gen Tacomas suffered from the frame rusting due to their box frames trapping water inside. Now, this forced the company to recall 800,000 trucks, but for the next generation of Tacomas, Toyota decided they wanted to outdo themselves. So from 2005 to 2011, Tacomas suffered from a different, even worse rust problem. 690,000 Tacomas were recalled because the rear leaf springs would rust and rot, causing them to snap in some very unfortunate cases, puncture the brake lines, and even the gas tank. The problem was the cheap steel being used to make the leaf springs rusted very easily. Toyota initially offered steel clips which went around the rotting leaf springs and held them together. But understandably, the owners weren't happy with this fix, and so a full recall was ordered.